Welcome to the Via Stoica Podcast, where we discuss Stoicism, the ancient philosophy of living the good life. I'm your host, Bryce, and I'm joined by my co-hosts, Benny and Brendan. We are here to help you apply Stoic wisdom to your everyday life, no matter what the obstacle you may be facing, whether it be work stress, relationship issues, or just the general ups and downs of life. Stoicism has something to offer us all.
Welcome to the Via Stoica Podcast. I am your co-host, Brendan, and I'm joined here by my good friend, Benny. Benny, how are you doing this morning?
I'm doing well, Brendan. Good to have you here, in the final days of this year and, wrapping it all up. But we're going to obviously have multiple conversations next year as well. But it's good to be here with you. How are you doing?
Oh, I am fantastic, Benny. Approaching the end of the year, it is my favorite time of the year. I do something where I take off about 10 to 15 days at the end of the year and completely review my life, reflect on the year, reflect on what I want to do in the upcoming year, the upcoming 3 to 5 years. Like I really have a system that I've been doing for the last couple of years, and it is like changed my life for the better. So that's what I think I want to talk about today. Of course, we have New Year's Eve coming up, or today, New Year's tomorrow, and we are, resolutions, reflection, these sort of things are topics that come up a lot during this time. So that's what we're going to discuss here today. Just to kick it off, I think that, of course, as Stoics, I believe that we are called to reflect often. The reason being that as Stoics, we are trying to we're curious about things and we're constantly trying to improve. And how you do that is you have to review in some way. You have to review your life in some way, whether that's the previous week, the previous month, the previous year. It doesn't matter. Any form of reflection is good. Seneca talks about it each night. Balance your books, balance what you've done today. When did I act virtuous? When did I not act virtuous? How would I like to change that next time I'm doing that thing or whatever? So I think it's really important. And if you're someone who values, growth and improvement and things like that, then some version of reflection is you need to be doing. There's really no other way around it, because I think it's great. And me personally, I'm very tech centered. I like everything to be on the computer. I want everything to be in Google Docs or something like that. But when it comes to this area of my life, I like to put pen to paper. There's something about having to write out the words, having to put it on a piece of paper and feel confident about what I'm writing. There's no eraser on a pen. Or backspace on a pen. That makes the what I'm saying and what I'm writing down to me more like solid. So I do like to get out. I usually buy a new notebook. And I start writing things out. But I do a number of things when it comes to like this kind of reflection thing, and we'll get into the details a little bit later. But yeah, I think that this is a really good topic for today, especially as we enter the new year. We can not only talk about our own individual kind of approaches, but I'd love to, Benny, if you're willing to kind of share, like, what are the things that you might want to be working on in the upcoming year. So stay tuned, because you'll find out what Benny and I are excited about in 2025. But Benny, as far as reflection, what is your experience with that up until this point, and how has Stoicism changed your view of reflection and its importance?
Yeah, and you made some good points there, and I think reflection is key, right? Because if you want to make improvement, you also want to know where you want to improve. And if it's I think it's somewhere, I don't know, one of the texts, maybe it's Epictetus who said, if you want to know whether it's something is a straight line, you got to have your rulers right? You got to make sure that you can measure the things. And how can you measure if you don't take any data, if you don't reflect, if you don't think? And it can also help, create a little bit more distance between the things that you're worried about or the things that you're struggling with, because you're looking at it from more of an observer moment, and outside of the moment, looking back at, hey, maybe I could have behaved better. Maybe I could have done this better. Maybe I did the right thing. Hey, look at me. I've improved. I used to do this and now I'm doing this. Wow, that's great, right? It doesn't have to be just looking at the negative things. It's also looking at the progress that you're already making, because we need to also have that positive confirmation that we are doing better, right? That's, I think, the main goal for Stoicism, is just to become a better person, not to be perfect, right? Because the Stoics are the first ones to acknowledge that fact. that the sage-like thing is quite a perfect situation that we're not probably going to reach, or maybe we will. At the moment, the last breath, that's the most perfect that we're probably going to be if we keep making progression. So yeah, reflection is key on this point, right? It is really important to look back and to take note and to take stock of all the things that have been going on. And as we talk about, now at the end of the year, doing this big reflection, this is something that the Stoics really encourage you to do every day, right? I have to be honest, I don't really do it as much as I should be doing. I do, but I reflect during the day and during the times. I think back and much more now. I think it really helped me in so many ways. It helped me to reduce my anxieties, my worries, but also to give me some positive sides that I've been working better, that I've been doing better and things. So for me, that's really important. And the Stoics, they give us this golden rule, right, of something that I think it comes from the Pythagoreans, to say like, okay, what are 2 things that went well, or 3 things that went well? What is 1 or 2 things that didn't go well, and what do I want to improve for the next day, right? And obviously, for something as big as the New Year's, you can make the list a bit longer. You can make these, or maybe just focus a little bit more on certain aspects of the year, because you can also look at a theme, give your year a theme. It went, this was the big thing that happened during the year. So with these reflections, we can really look at it from more of an objective side, and then we can make that progress, right? So I think that's why reflections are important to me. I'm going to start a new tradition this year to read Meditations again and read the handbook of Epictetus. So it's also more about having traditions, like you said there, Brendan, like you buy a new notebook and you do things that kind of get you in a mental space where you can really do this well. And that's where it kind of, even if you have a daily tradition of journaling or these things, they really get you in a frame of mind. You say, okay, now this is what I've got to do. And the same thing with New Year's, right? So I think that's why reflection is really important, to give you that sense of like, okay, where am I going, right? You're drawing a line from A to B, where you are, and I to C, which is the unknown. And you say that, okay, where's this line kind of going, right? And how kind of bendy, or how much, where is it going? And can I make it straight? Can I make it go to at least in a line upward where I feel like I'm getting better? So that's where I kind of see reflection. I'm not the best person or best example you can take to see like more of a structured way of reflecting, but I do reflect a lot, and maybe sometimes even a little bit too much.
Yeah. Oh, that's great, Benny. No, I'm glad of, some things you said. I think, for one, like this idea of, I think that reflection, me personally, like I do try and do at least a little bit every week. At the end of every week, I, think to myself, what went well? What do I want to change for next week? More often than not, though, it's not anything where I actually have much action from it. It's just like a moment for me to kind of stop and pause and say, okay, did anything go drastically wrong this week that I need to change for next week? No? Okay, I'll move on. But I do try and do something every quarter that's a bit more. So every 3 months, I try and do something that's a bit more like getting in more into the details, like, hey, 3 months ago, I thought this was a good idea to pursue with one of my companies. Well, let's review. Is it actually working? Is it doing anything? Is it moving the needle? If not, maybe I need to not do that task anymore, or not, keep that person on staff anymore, or whatever it is. So I do think that, and then again, at the end of the year, I have an even more like robust kind of review process. So for me, I that's how I kind of ratchet it up each time. But I do agree that that's what it does for you, is it gives you that 1,000-foot view that we talk about a lot, but it gives you a better perspective about, and like you even mentioned it, like, yes, maybe this week I had a problem that was really terrible and really felt like it took over the whole week. But once I sit here and review the previous 52 weeks, that problem gets very small and very minimal. And it shows me that even in that moment, when I first came head to head with that challenge, I said, wow, this is really difficult. This is going to be a big deal. Well, now I look back and I don't even think about it. I don't even remember that challenge existed. And I think that's a good perspective to carry with yourself, because you're going to face more challenges as the years go on, right? And I think it's good that you have that reflection, because it reminds you of where you accomplished things, where you've changed, where you've grown. I used to not do well with, let's say, challenging things, right? I used to kind of avoid challenging situations. And then, as becoming an entrepreneur changed that for me real fast, because challenges come all the time. And And it was the first year after being an entrepreneur that I decided I wanted to start making a theme for the year. So I love how you brought that up, like kind of having like an idea, or all your resolutions or your goals kind of have like a theme. And that has been a huge unlock for me, because it really does help focus me. So like in the past, some themes I've had are grit. Grit was something that I was trying to grow in myself, because I knew entrepreneurship is hard. So I said, okay, I want to do things to be more gritty. And how do I do that? And then most recently it was foundation. It was, okay, I've got a good perspective on where I want the rest of my life to go, but now I want to build a foundation that is solid. So I've been working on relationships in my life. I've been working on, establishing more passive income that isn't something that is, directly tied to my time. I've been doing things to build a foundation in my life that it can support me through the next 30 plus years, fate willing. So I do think that themes of the year are a really big thing. That's something that I love doing. I think it's really, and you can also have themes, like, just to kind of, it doesn't have to be one, right? Like, so typically I think of my life in 3 buckets: personal, professional, and then traveling, because that's a whole different side of my life. And you can have a theme for each one. You know what I mean? So it's really up to you. That's the beauty of the reflection kind of review process, is make it your own. Listen to other people, take some ideas from this conversation, go listen to other people that have a good, I got a lot of my ideas from Tim Ferriss. So he's another great one to listen to about kind of reflecting on the year and how you review, but find your own system and figure it out for yourself. But I do think that making sure that you're consistently doing something gives you that moment to not get lost in the routine. I can't tell you how many times when I was working in my corporate life for about 5 years, I didn't even remember driving to work. Don't remember the drive, because it's so routine. I did it so every single day, twice a day, for years. So it's like, I don't even remember the drive because I was stuck in the routine. And I don't want my life to be that. I don't want to forget periods of my life because I'm stuck in a routine. And reflection is what helps me kind of say, okay, here's the routine I have. Do I want to keep this routine? Why do I have this routine? Maybe I should tweak it or change it. And that's like a really beautiful thing, to know that you kind of take a pause, you tweak some things, you change some things, and maybe you only turn, the car 1 or 2 degrees to the right, but you're still heading in a slightly different direction, and you're getting just that much better, and you're improving that just that little bit more. So I would heavily encourage you to have some sort of reflection process, even if it's just at the end of the year. You don't have to be doing it every month or every week. That is absolutely not necessary. That's what I like, but not necessary. But every year, I think, is a good time to do that. At least to have that annual kind of perspective and review, because, as we know, years as they go by, there's a lot of seasons to them. There's a lot of things that you can depend on in the upcoming year. So if hey, for the last 35 years, I've been doing it this way, maybe I want to do something a little bit different, this upcoming year. So that's really what I kind of do as far as a reflection. And then when it actually gets into like the resolution part of it, and maybe that's what we'll do now, kind of shift the conversation a little bit. When I'm forming resolutions, I'm going to push back, Benny, on a little bit. You said something about having a long list. I don't like long lists. I like to have one thing. I read a book by Jesse Itzler where he went and lived with monks. And as part of the training, when he was living with these monks, they told him about something called monotasking. And it's all you do is you are focused solely on the one thing you are doing. And if that's washing the dishes, then all you think about is washing the dishes. If that's sweeping the floor, then all you're thinking about is sweeping the floor. You're not trying to plan out that project at work. You're not trying to remember the grocery list you need to buy for the family. You're just thinking about sweeping the floor. And I've really taken that to heart, because I think that we have limited energy, we have limited time, and I don't want to be focusing on 5 different things at once. Yes, I want to accomplish 5 things, but I want to do them in an order, and I want to do them one at a time. So that's what I do with my resolutions. If I say, hey, I'm trying to practice Spanish more, which is something that I'm trying to do, I will focus on that, and that will be my resolution until it's kind of built into my habits, until I've had a month or 2 where I'm doing Spanish every morning, or I've started to meet with a Spanish group a few times a week, and I'm doing that consistently for months. And once it's a part of my habit, I kind of consider that resolution somewhat complete, and then I move on to the next one. Okay, well, now I want to change this little thing. So I don't try and do too much at once. And I think that's been a big thing too. We can overwhelm ourselves with how much we think we can change in 1 year. We really overestimate that. Change takes a long time. Change is difficult, especially if you're changing a habit that you've been doing for decades. That's going to take even longer to change. So I think just being gentle with yourself as you go through change is really important. And do the smallest thing, because you can always increase it. And that feels good, right? You say, I'm going to do this very easy thing, and then you do it. That feels good. It's like a friend of mine, he calls it stacking W's. He likes to stack W's so he gets as many wins as he can. And how he does that is by making them very, very small and attainable. And then he stacked a bunch of W's, and now he's got this reserve of energy and he's excited. And, so I take that idea to the kind of resolution thing as well. But Benny, what about you? Do you have any resolutions, or how do you think about resolutions, or tackle that sort of task?
Yeah, and I wanted to kind of bring it back to the perspective part that you said, because I think that that's a really big point as well as we talk about this. And especially because I think a lot of people are kind of fed up with resolutions and they do like reflection. But I do think that this is a great moment to look back, right? As you said, to give yourself that perspective of things that have happened. And when you give yourself a theme of the year and you look at all the bad things, it also gives you some power to look at, I've overcome all these obstacles that I think weren't over, that were too big for me in the moment. But now you look back, Marcus Aurelius talks about zooming out, the 10,000-foot view. This is a great moment to apply that practice, right? This is the perfect moment, and apply it over time and look at where you started at the year and where you are now and all those things that came across your path. And even the difficult things that you're going through right now, project that in the future and say, hey, where is this going to be in my life next year when I'm thinking about this? And maybe that'll give you some more, different perspective on the things that you're going through. But as we reflect, and as we think about that, and as we pause, right? Again, our newsletter, the pause, sign up if you haven't done so already. But as we pause, we start to look forward, right? We have our measurement tools ready. We've got our rulers lined up. We know where we're coming from, and we know where we want to go. And I like what you said about having limited resolutions. And first, there's this other thing that we have to keep in mind. Marcus Aurelius said, you want to be a better person, yet you choose tomorrow. And you could do that right now, right? So that's one of the things that we also want to remind ourselves, that even if you're reflecting on things and it's throughout the year, or maybe even on, January or December 30th, you can do it on December 31st instead of January 1st. You can still do that right now. But I think it is good to have certain things that you can work on for a year, maybe a little bit of an extended period of time, where you can kind of focus. And maybe during that year, you can say, like you with your Spanish, like, oh, during the year, I'm getting more into a habit of doing this. And I'm really looking into it, right? But one of the things that I feel, and why these resolutions don't really work well, is because of the reasons why we're doing it, right? A lot of these things, for example, with drinking, I've got experience with that, but other things that we try to change those habits, when we do that out of willpower, right? When we say, oh, it's January 1st, I'm going to do this right now, blah, blah, blah. But if we don't have the right motivations, if we don't know our whys behind it, then they usually don't stick, right? And usually by January 6th, I think I've heard someone say that usually the second week of January, like January 6th, is one of the most depressing times of the year. And I've had conversations with other people around that. Some say November, but because then we have our resolutions and they failed again, and we feel bad about ourselves because I really wanted to change this. But if you don't have the right reasons why you want to change it, and that's why the reflection is important, because then you can stack up all the reasons, like, hey, I need to change this because it's negatively impacted my life this way, that way, or maybe I just I don't like the way I'm turning out, where my character is going. So once we start to have the right reasons, we can use that as an intrinsic motivation instead of purely based on willpower. Because come January 5th or 4th, or maybe even the 1st, once you've had that great New Year's Eve party and you're just like, oh, I want to not have hangovers anymore. Well, that's January 1st for you gone. So your New Year's resolution is gone. So if we can find if we can make those changes not purely based on willpower, then we can make them long lasting, right? Then we can make them. And then you can also start with small incremental changes. As you said, take the small wins that you can make and just say, okay, let me just make a plan of how I'm going to get to where I want to be next year by just changing one thing first and then making it smaller, right? Isn't that like the book on habits where they say, just put on your trainers without even going outside, and put on your trainers and go outside. And then, and maybe even after a month, you'll end up in the gym and just look around. And then at one point you start going. And that's the same thing here. But you need to have the right motivation, because otherwise the easiest and smallest setback will just keep you from continuing and just keep you from doing whatever you want. So I think for me, when we look at the reflection, when we look at the, putting it in a broader perspective, but also knowing what kind of person you want to become, right? Because this is the path, the via from Via Stoica that we're talking on, where you want to go. Those points are really important, right? If you ask someone to navigate somewhere, like on a boat or whatever, they need a couple of points on the map to know where they're going. Like one single point isn't enough. And 3 points will be great, because then you know where you came from, where you want to go, and where you are right now. And that's what the Stoics really want you to focus on, to have that reflection, but also have a path forward and be kind and, compassionate, as we said, like if things don't work out. But if you have the right motivation to make that change, then you can actually do it. And again, don't wait until January 1st. Get cracking, get doing it right now. But if you do feel like, and some people, I can understand myself, my personality, it is nice to have a clean start, right? To say, it feels like a new start, new year, it feels fresh. Let me go for it. And just make sure that you have a plan. Maybe already start lining up some steps before you reach January 1st, some practice runs. And then when you hit January 1st, you take off. So for me, those are the great, the important parts of this time of year, where you can really reflect on the bigger picture, but also on the smaller picture.
Yeah. I love that, Benny. I love that you brought up the why. I think that's super important as to why we're doing these things, because I think that's what, that statistic you brought up. I've heard something similar where it's by like the first, 10 to 12 days into January, like everyone's abandoned their New Year's resolution, or 50% or something have abandoned their New Year's resolution at that point. But yeah, having a why, like not just knowing it, but making sure that the why is tied to who you are as a person, right? Like, I guess the easiest one to talk about is going to the gym, right? Everyone talks about it at the beginning of the year, January 1st. Okay, I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to lose some weight. I'm going to get in shape, get healthy, whatever. But if you're just doing that for appearance, right? If you're just doing that so people are more attracted to you, that's not a very good why. That's probably why a lot of people who sign up to go to the gym on January 1st aren't paying that gym membership anymore come February. You know what I mean? So I think that your why really needs to be centered in you. Why do you want this? Health was something that was never really a priority to me, as my, let's say, eating and drinking habits in college clearly show. But eventually it started to become important to me, because I said, wow, I want to be around for my kids. I want to see the world change and grow. I want to live for a very long time. I want to be able to be physically active into my old age. I want to be able to still go on hikes when I'm 60, 70, 80 years old. And the way to do that is to start now by slowly just making sure that I'm going for walks, going for runs. I don't need to go to CrossFit every day and lift 200 pounds. I just need to do little things here and there. And it's over time how these things change. So I really think that this idea of making the goal or your resolution as small as possible, like you said, if you're trying to start running, just start by just putting the shoes on and going outside. You don't even have to run. Walk around in your front yard in the running shoes. That's a good start. And I know it sounds silly, and you're picturing yourself walking around in your front yard in your tennis shoes, and that's a little weird, but it doesn't matter, because if you get there, if that's the stepping stone that gets you to the part where you're running 5 miles or however many miles you want to run, then who cares? Who cares about the stepping stone? It's the goal that matters. And so I think that that's where people get lost in the sauce a little bit, because you don't need, just because you on December 30th decide that every day I'm going to run a mile, and then come January 3rd you didn't run a mile that day. Who cares? Change the goal. Okay, I want to run half a mile every day. A mile was too much. I'm going to try half a mile. I'm going to try a quarter of a mile. I'm going to try it every other day. I don't know. Change it, tweak it, however you need to, but don't give up. Giving up is quitting, right? Change what you're trying to do to just at least continue pursuing the path, right? Because that's the whole point of this idea of a reflection, right? We reflect on where we have, what does our path looked like up until this point? And here we are, and now we're deciding, what do we want our path to look like for the next year, right? Quitting is not what we want to do. We want to improve. We want to become healthier. We want to learn Spanish. We want to learn how to play the guitar. Whatever we want to learn, whatever we want to do it. Just a little bit each day. can really start to make a change. So think about that as you're kind of putting together your resolutions. Is you can always increase the intensity or the difficulty. Make it as easy as possible. I like to imagine myself sick in bed. If I'm sick in bed with the flu and I feel terrible and my nose is running and I'm coughing, what can I do? Can I still get out of bed and maybe do like 10 jumping jacks? Okay, well, that's where I'm going to start. That's my goal. I'm going to do 10 jumping jacks every day. And then I'm going to do 20 and 30. And so like, that's what I mean when I say making it as small as possible, is really getting it down to the smallest thing you possibly can, and then tweak it as you go. Because at the end of the day, tweaking the goal, changing the goal to be a little bit easier for you is better than quitting it. So that's my 2 cents on kind of that approach. But I think as long as you're improving and as long as you're doing something every day or every week or whatever is comfortable for you, that's a W. And then you have those moments at the end of the year or the end of the month or 6 months in or whatever, where you look back and you reflect and you go, good job, me, because I did that. I said I was going to do it, and here I am doing it. And now I'm going to keep doing it. And it just builds that reserve of grit. It builds that motivation, that internal motivation, like what you were talking about, Benny. So yeah, I mean, that to me is, the way, right? Start the process and then just move forward in it. We talk about the process here a lot on Via Stoica, but it is really important, and it can be as small and as easy as you want it to be, because it's up to you. So that's my 2 cents. Benny, if you have anything else, I think we can kind of start to wrap up this topic here, unless you've got somewhere else you want to go with this.
No. I think that this is a great point to kind of wrap it up. And then we talked about, the reflection, the putting things in perspective, and also the resolutions, the plans that we have. And one thing that I just quickly wanted to add there as well, we talk about motivation, but also make sure that these resolutions are your own, right? Often we get kind of dragged along with other people's plans and other people's ideas, but they might not be ours or other people's ways of doing it. And you kind of hinted on it as well. Make sure that these are your own ways of doing it. Maybe you don't want to go run for 5 miles, but you want to go for a walk every day, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, just so make sure that these things do the things that feel comfortable with you and that feel aligned with who you are. And that's what the Stoics talk about, to live in accordance with nature. Do that the same with these resolutions. Don't follow the other people, but sit down and think, okay, maybe that's interesting, but let me tweak it, right? As you said, let me just make it short, but make it your own. I think that, and if you do so, then you will also make it, again, longer lasting with the right whys, the right motivation, and the right path that you want to improve on. So yeah, for now, set those resolutions, go and reflect. I'm going to do the same. I'm going to write some stuff down, maybe not a notepad like Brendan there, just, but I'm going to fill some pages hopefully. And if not, then I'm just going to reflect by myself and look out the window and see what's going on and appreciate the world.
Absolutely. And if you're working on your resolutions and you want a little, someone to pitch them to or kind of bounce some ideas off of, we do offer free consultations on viastoica.com. Sign up for a free consultation. You get an hour with us. We can go over your resolutions with you and kind of talk about them a little bit, and completely for free. So if that's something you're interested in, again, check out viastoica.com for a free consultation, and we'd love to meet you. But Benny, I hope you have I had a wonderful year with Via Stoica this year. And I hope you have a wonderful 2025 as well there, my friend. And thank you so much for having a conversation with me today.
Same to you, Brendan, and have a great New Year's. And I hope you had a good 2024 and up for a better 2025.
Oh yeah, only up, baby.
Thank you for listening to the Via Stoica Podcast. If you have enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing, rating, and leaving a review. Your feedback will help us reach more like-minded people on the journey to self-improvement. If you want to get in touch with us or find more information, you can go to viastoica.com, your one-stop platform for all things Stoicism and living better. And remember, virtue is the only good.